Right. Welcome everybody. I think we're in what, season 12 now?
Yep.
Yeah, we're in season 12 of the NAOL. Wow, time goes by. Um, a bit later than usual, but we'll get in. The first game is C Young versus H1. We'll hop right into that game. It's pretty the usual. If anybody else who did not play the game has questions, or if anybody who did play the game is here and has questions, please feel free to interrupt me and ask them. More than happy to answer. All right. And so the game starts fairly standard, double 4-4, 4-4, 3-4. Black approaches high. This move is becoming a little more rare nowadays, but still quite playable. Typically, white is playing attachment and taking territory and giving black the influence, and we sort of get the classic divide of one person going for the center, the other going for territory. But white breaks away from the mold a little bit and plays one space low pincer. This one was very popular, maybe 2010 to 2014 pre-AI. Um, there were a lot of variations that were sort of studied into oblivion by professional games. Many different ways, of course, black can answer A, B, C. These are the most common ones. Black chooses the simplest option and white goes for the inside Hane. And so here, normally, even if white's plan is to play F16, typically white is going to extend first. General principle, and this is good for most Q players to learn, when you're going to get rid of the stone anyway, a lot of the times you can get extra value out of it by playing one more move inside to increase your liberties. Now it's going to take white three whole steps, or black three whole steps to capture white, as opposed to one. So even if black were to say play something like this, threatening to capture, first it doesn't even really cleanly capture white, white can escape, but even if it could, we might get even an extra benefit, for example, this extra Atari at five, which gives white more influence towards the center. If we just look at it in the case of this exchange, while I can't say it's terrible for white, white doesn't get a follow-up to A. There's no extra move at B for free. So white loses a little bit here by not extending to B16 first. So already black has a small advantage. At this level, doesn't really make much of a difference to the end of the game, but worth to note that it's there. And then white goes more for territory. Now, for those that have watched the How to Think in the Middle Game lecture, you guys probably understand the sort of importance of going through the list and identifying weak groups. Those who have studied with Yulin Yang and Shy Ghost will know this also. Um, this white group is okay, but it's not quite strong yet. For example, when black checks it with A or peeps it at B, the group loses eye space very quickly. And because black is very thick here after the capture, it's actually not the easiest group to run to the center also. Um, Granted, it is slow for white to spend a move to fix it, but it is something that white should keep in mind when white's playing in the rest of the board. And the reason that I bring it up is because on this board, white has just invaded 3-3, which means white is going to give even more influence to black. If black is going to be in an attacking position, black should be really happy for this result. And so black goes for it. This knight's move comes with a lot of caveats. It's playable presuming certain ladders work, and also presuming that the direction of the flying knife is valid. Um, Generally speaking, if there is a ladder, the ladder is going to come from here. And sort of we can double check that really quickly and see, okay, it's going to clear to black's area. And then the flying knife is the only other thing that we have to look at. For those that are unfamiliar, this is the sort of infamous Joseki, right? That nobody really wants to learn, but if you want to play Go at a high level, everyone has to know it. Um, but this idea is if we just think of the standard mainline flying knife, black is typically going to get some influence here, and white is going to get some influence here. Now on this board, I think I probably would prefer this more for white than I would for black, simply because, oh, whoops, simply because the black influence is facing a white stone. And white has now blocked both good developments of rapid expansion from the black B stone. So on the whole board, white is getting a little bit more control. When you're black and you're the one that wants to be in the driver's seat, the attacking side, your natural benefit and go with the black pieces is that you start with the initiative. Giving your opponent that positional advantage sort of mitigates that a little bit, and then it gets even worse if they have Komi. So it might be simpler for black then to extend here. We can go into the normal Joseki, and then if black wants, black can of course Tanuki. You can play, for example, here, or maybe you can enclose if that's your style. You can invade white's 3/3 or approach. Any move is fine. Can even extend if you'd like. But this one seems a bit more concise. Doesn't leave options for white to try to get advantage back. But okay, white reverted to the standard Joseki, so it ends up being the same anyway. And then black commits locally with the same move. So now something to note, this position is considered to be finished locally at this point. If black chooses to continue, it is now a continuation to the Joseki, more so than a Joseki itself. At least that's the way I like to think about it, because there are many different ways that black could handle the position. Like we just saw, you could play A, you could play B, you could switch at C. You could enclose at D, E, invade F, approach G. How do we know which one is the best? Generally, we need the context of the whole board to tell us, but right now the board is not very developed. We do have this question in the upper left corner, and so black having more thickness might be useful for that. But we need to make sure, oh, whoops, we need to make sure that we have a sente. The problem with this one is that it ends in gote typically. If it ends in gote and white gets the chance to fix white's self, for example, let's say white can jump, then we have the influence, but it's not going to be useful in the whole board attack. So a lot of times, black is going to leave the position and do something else, play another move elsewhere, and sort of come back to it when it's big enough or when black has a certain plan in mind. That's not to say extending is a mistake. Extending is certainly not a mistake. It is a valid option that black can choose. We just have to understand that by playing A or by playing C, we are committing to an idea, and we should follow through with that commitment. And then here, black plays this approach. And so I guess my question would be maybe why did black play it? Generally speaking, when we approach a corner, we're we're playing a probing move. We're asking our opponent what it is that they value in the area. Do they value fighting and getting a position on the side? Do they value the corner? Um, Here we're playing the approach, but we're playing it from the smaller side, right? If we sort of count the number of lines, the left direction for approaching is much wider than the bottom. It's going to be far less concentrated. So if black wants to tanuki this and play an approach, the c6 approach should be bigger in terms of scale. Even though f3 is in the smaller side and closer to the corner, it's actually a bit more of a liability because white has this key middle game shape idea of Hane at the head of two, which white can exploit right now to concentrate black's shape. Has anybody had a situation like this happen to them in their games? No? Well, pray you never have to because it's a bit painful. Because now white's going to be able to kick you and then jump. And in a situation like this, okay, maybe black has a fighting chance. There's a cut, black can extend to get a base. But the problem is that black is completely surrounded by white. And white is going to be the one in the attacking position. So even though it looks like, oh, black is building such a grand thing, black never has time to finalize it because black is always worried about the weak group. And so this is why the approach at f3 is usually not advised. If black wants to control the bottom, just simply extending is going to be better most of the time. In general, directionally speaking, A should be better than B, and C is also better than B for the most part. Okay, but then white answered. So here, this is a case where white could improve the position by recognizing that black left a bit of a middle game question open, and those can be a bit more urgent than a big opening point. Okay, so then they both sides continued to play Joseki. It's fine. Black took Sente and then played C11. So many of us here have probably heard of terms like fast and slow in terms of development. But generally speaking, when it comes to the middle game, slow is more likely to be used in the sense of follow-up potential of a move. When we make a move that doesn't really generate a next follow-up, that move is slow. And that's what this black move is doing. It's playing on a side of the board where white is, but it's playing very far away from white, and it's very close to black's own thickness. Generally speaking, when we have a thickness like this, we want to play as far away from it as humanly possible. For black, that would be, at least on the left side, that would be the attachment at one. If black thinks that this is a weak group, then black probably doesn't want to touch the weak group, and so black can find a balance by playing the attacking placement of c8. And this would be a far better extension. I think the area of confusion that comes from most people is that they play a move like this and they think, okay, I'm going to get this extra territory and deny white a lot of extra territory, but it's really small. And they think, oh, but if I attack, white's just going to invade and I'm not going to get any points. And then that's what am I doing it for? And that's certainly understandable. But we have to understand too that the purpose of thickness is to attack and get profit, not to take profit and gote on the side of the board. So here, if white does play the pinch at two, this is actually a good opportunity for black to really punish white. Because the problem is the white A stone and the white B group are both not settled or completely strong yet. And so black has targets. And there can become questions later with the white C group. So for example, if black is playing something like three, white might have to spend some moves escaping. If we can imagine, okay, white is getting out, and black is also getting out. Now the white two stone has to fight against the thickness for survival. Okay, maybe white can somehow secure it. White can get himself out. But as white is getting themselves out, white's getting sealed in on the other side. And it's just this continuing process where white has to try to run all three groups towards the same direction. And black only really has the one group splitting everything. Black is going to win the game quite easily this way. White will never see initiative again. So white would have to be very careful. And so black could have gotten a little more out of this. So white comes in, black plays the same knight's move. The same logic here would apply. We have to check things like the ladder and we have to check things like this attachment. In this case, I would again recommend black play here. And if white pushes, I would actually recommend black extend again. This is really useful in situations like this where having super thick control of one side of the board can be very lucrative for black. It doesn't give white a lot of leverage. Okay. And so black just continues this building and then white invades. And so invasion is making sense, right? White doesn't want to have to deal with a huge black right side moyo becoming exclusively territory. So I can't say that timing is bad. I think more accurate for white would actually be to look for sentes that reduce from the outside first. And that might also align with another goal. So for example, if white can find the hane at A and the double hane here at 3, it looks scary to push and start giving black what looks like, eighth line territory. But the problem the black's going to run into is that the black group in the corner isn't alive yet. This is a bit of a case because black hasn't played the finishing move of the Joseki, this A or B move. Black took a loan in the bottom right corner or bottom left corner to play this extending move on the side. This move is not free for black. Black is taking a loan out on the bottom left for this move. And white can sort of collect on that loan with interest in terms of this attack white can generate on the bottom starting from M3. If black tries to get ahead of that idea by saying, oh, I see that you're going to try to build this wall to attack me severely, I'll just settle. Then at this point, white is going to be able to curl around the black wall, and now the 5 black stones are weak. And at the same time that white is pressuring these 5 stones and attacking, white is also geared up the trajectory to go right inside black's moyo and is reducing it from the center. Now white doesn't need to take a risk creating a weak group inside the black area. Okay, so white's making a base, and now black needs a sort of continuation plan. Is black going to try to attack the white group and make it run to the center? Or is black going to offer white to live small on the side and try to seal the center of the board to then go do something else? If black wants to attack the white group, then black is going to be looking for moves around A, B, maybe C, D, E. These are sort of the moves that are going to force white, like spur white into the center. And if black is looking to keep white pressed, black might consider moves like 1 or 2. These are the ones that will let white live locally with 2 eyes and some small territory, and in exchange, black will transfer the Moyo potential to the center to then do something else, like, for example, push at F or attack the G group. So black chooses to cap, but black caps from the thicker wall rather than the thinner group. The reason we don't really want this one, there's a bit of a pain point here for black with the A Hane. As white is beginning to play moves like jump to center, white's going to be able to squeeze the black group from M3 and start wrapping around it, which will help white naturally draw this group out into the middle, something like this. So would it be better would be for black to cap this way, because if white jumps at any point, black can get even stronger with some exchange in the corner, either descend or some hane. But the black wall is much thicker in the shape, and so it's much harder for white to get outside of black's sphere of influence. So we can imagine, because black always has these exchanges at any time, black might even be able to play more severe like this, cutting off 1 stone, or black might be able to attack with something like maybe this cap around 3, or maybe this cap here. Um, these would be common ideas. All right. So sort of moving on, white ignored the attack. This was very brave. So this is kind of a 50-50 move, looking for the Hane A and the Peep at B, kind of trying to make Miai of both. We see black defending A, so white should be sliding. Because white answers, though, the answering move is not Sente. Technically, black can get both now. And then black can even follow up their previous move. We can imagine something like this, and all of a sudden the white group is running. This would be a good result for black. Okay, black got to cover. This is a very aggressive way of doing it, but black is effectively doing the same thing and then trying to seal the white group in. Black could also seal the white group with this capping move. This might be a bit of a shape detail black might not have been aware of. Um, if white tries to come through the gap here, there's a couple different ways black can go. One of them is going to be to cover from the center and try to seal black in with something like this. If it works, then great. In this case, white might catch 2 stones, but white is sealed in. So this might be acceptable. Black also damages the corner. Another way black can think of to play sometimes is to hit white with this when this move is Tesuji. It can be useful. You can see here, if black gets to cut, the stone at 6 is sort of dead. If white extends, black cuts, and white's going to lose the 2 stones. So very, very difficult for white to do anything other than connect on top and Hane, allowing black to press in at 7 and then seal white in with 9. And so this is not quite like a Joseki, but it's like a middle game sort of standard side pattern that black can use to attack white's shape in situations like this. This one can be found in some Go books. Whoops. There we go. Okay, but then white chooses to ignore again and settle the top. This is going to take care of the problem of black having this sort of A-B combination, but it does leave the C group relatively weak. Black got 2 moves against it, and white's going to eventually have to pay premium for this. If black even so much as plays something like this next, the 2 stones are, although not completely dead, are nearly dead. Maybe 85% of the way to knocking on heaven's door, so to say. Um, if black gets the right side territory, it will be quite big. White's sort of banking that white's 3 small areas, this area here, area here, and probably whatever this comes out to be, if it's more than 2 points, is going to be worth more than all of this. Um, I mean, 7.5 komi is a bit steep, but maybe it can work. And then white ignores this. Now, this is a bit dangerous for white to ignore this one. Dangerous in the sense that this black move at 1 becomes Tesuji. If white answers in the corner to protect the corner from getting squeezed with the Hane and a double Hane, then now black has achieved a second line peeping move, essentially looking underneath white's skirt. White no longer has a base and no longer has eyes, which means when black is starting to play things like this, uh, white actually stands a pretty good chance of dying locally. Not a good situation for white to be in. Plus, this move is kind of similar to this A stone in that it's a very slow move. The follow-up is not incredibly pertinent to black. It's not very impressive. If black ignores it and white attaches, you might go, oh, but isn't attaching a good thing? It would be if the A group wasn't super thick. Black can ignore it again. If white continues to go after the one stone, who's getting the better end of the deal, right? White capturing the stone at C11 doesn't really mean anything. White's not going to be able to attack the black group. So there's no follow-up potential in terms of attacking. White's only going to get whatever the territory influence benefit is. Meanwhile, black collected an entire corner back. They're not congruent. So in this case, this white move was a bit off mark. White needed to save either the corner or white needed to spend the time to actually get the stones out on the right-hand side. I would say now at this point, if black can capitalize, black will be firmly winning the game. Black will have a lead. Okay, so the fact this little dancing that everybody's doing just means that both players are kind of missing the main point. Oops. The main point being that we're in the middle game, and so we have to focus on weak and strong groups. The A B group is weak. Black's C group is the only group that might be weak if white starts to run, because white's running move at one would also be attacking the C group or moving a running direction. So this is the area where we need to be playing. In the middle game, we should always play near the weak groups. And so now black finally gets the first move against white's weak group. And white has effectively got three weak groups at the moment. So just kind of skimming through, white manages to live. White manages to live, and then the attack continues. Now here, white got very aggressive, but this aggression is a bit much. Black has a lot more strength, I think, than white realized. Um, and black sort of proves it by cutting through the white group. And I think that this might have been a small misread by Hansen, but once black captures the five stones in the center, the game is pretty much over. There was a case later in the game, I think, when I looked at it earlier, where black could have closed out the end game a little bit faster. And that's gonna be around let's continue, I guess. That's gonna be around the end here. Black had the ability to cut and extend and kill the whole bottom left. If black had found this, white would be dead, but it was already a moot point to begin with. Right, that will finish game one. A good game to both players. We will move to the second game, which I believe is your game, Arunas,
Yes.
against Ipon 4Q, which seems to be an opponent you've played before, judging by the game comments.
Yeah.
He did not succeed in revenging, and in fact, it was quite a landslide victory from what I saw, so good job. Um, Again, relatively standard. There's not really much to say in the opening, although Black's decision here was interesting from the opening perspective. Generally speaking, when we have the option to approach A versus B, we tend to take that as black. And the reason that we take the A direction over the B direction is because the A direction is something we would call like the mutually beneficial side. So here we've got white aiming down the left, we've got black aiming up the left. But on the top, it's just two white stones that see each other. And so when black is playing B, it's like, oh, black is trying to interrupt the communication. It's very confrontational. But when black plays at A, it's working better with all of black's stones. Black is getting a much nicer opening development by creating the sort of three connected corners. And black can get a whole board position that's useful in the middle game for fighting. For example, something like this mini Kobayashi on the side. Black is going to make the game a bit harder with this one because it seems like the plan from the get-go is to break up all the board into smaller territories and really try to have this like tight territory fighting game. And Runas agrees and obliges black with the two-space pincer. I like that you're not backing down. Good job. Here, black is being a little bit scared. If you're gonna play this way, grow up, cut. Don't don't be don't be afraid. You have to continue it. This one being like, oh no, please don't hurt me. I just want to settle. You're only gonna be giving your opponent more ammo against you, even if the hope is that white's gonna play like this, right? Or maybe black was hoping white was going to go for something like this and black would be able to connect and build an influence. I don't really know what black's plan was. But my recommendation here would be A, B, or Tanuki. Probably it's going to be one of those three ideas. Because even if white had just sealed you into the corner, it would be good enough already for white. Okay. Not sure why black attached there. Maybe black was thinking that the whole Joseki was on the star point, not the 3-4 point. Maybe there was some confusion. But the star point direction is usually going to be better for black in terms of which way to Hane. Like this, white has already succeeded in keeping black very low. The territory, even if black had cut and captured, was very small. Not really worth a whole lot. Whereas white could completely seal black in and get really good thickness. Now it might seem like, oh, black got territory in the corner, white got this useless wall facing a black stone. Black just plays some enclosure and negate it. But thickness is not quite the same as influence, and white can still use the thickness later if black puts any weak stones next to it. So black will have to be a little bit careful. Plus, when you're completely sealed in the corner like this, it means any variation here that might be in white's back pocket that involves ladders is now going to favor white. So that's the other important detail that we have to know. And we can move forward. Hane here is too much. White has 5 liberties post the Hane. 5 is the magic number in Go. If you have 5 liberties, you're usually considered thick. It's very hard to capture you in a liberty race. So white will cut, and white will not think twice about cutting. Instead of this, what black could do is black could just leave the position. Black could also bump and allow white the Hane and then play the Hane, but it's only worth a few extra points of territory and not really worth it to get squeezed into the corner like this, giving white even more thickness. We can compare that shape to if black had played here, for example, and white had bumped. Both cases doesn't really matter much because the black corner cannot die. If white extends threatening to cut black, black will simply switch back to the corner to live. And if white defends the corner saying, hey, you can't have that, then black will just play the Hane connect. So black is already at a miai to live here. No need for black to continue. The group is safe. So here, black is saying, okay, I'm safe. I'm going to cut. For me, cut should be okay because white is not going to be able to attack the corner hard, which is true. But the problem is white's outside is going to be so much thicker than black's 2 stones in the center. Black is going to be on the back foot in the fight because black hasn't prepared the cut first. So in situations like this, we have to do some calculation, right? So 1, 2, and then we have to imagine we're probably extending to 3, right? White might choose to play 4 to keep all of white's liberties tight and fix white's wall. Black will have to play 5, 6, 7. And now all of a sudden, white is thick on both sides. Now 8 comes. And when 8 comes, white is building the upper area and black is playing on Dame in the center while black has to run. Then as black is running, white can get the key extension for the wall, which is also going to reduce black's star point's ability to expand down the right side. Is that making sense so far?
Yep.
So this one is a reading exercise. Black had to read 8 moves to figure out that the cut doesn't work. So the sequence plays out pretty much as expected. Black deviates at the last second by extending to the first line. This move isn't necessary. You can just simply go here. And it's not necessary because white cannot kill you. This is where our Chochikun life and death problems really come in handy. Black was alive. So this descent to the first line gave white an extra forcing move. White doesn't have to take it. White chose to take it, but white didn't have to. And black technically loses a little bit in endgame with this exchange. If we don't have this exchange on the board, and we just have the connection and white plays out elsewhere, later black can play the Hane. And there's going to be a threat to go underneath. So black loses that by making the exchange and then white comes out. This one is certainly possible. White can play this way. Slightly more assertive way, I think, is probably what I would have played, Arunas. You can make this knight's move. You're not really afraid of black trying to bump and Hane here. Like, let's just say even worst case, you actually accept it and just extend. These exchanges are painful for black to make. Because as black has to make these exchanges towards the center to gain shape, white is collecting points, right? And then white can continue to bend around. And the reason white can do that is because the wall is very thick and strong. Black cannot surround it or capture easily. That's where having the more than five liberties thing really comes into play here. This one was just a bit soft. And so now later in the game, black is going to have access to stuff like this for free, basically, to fix the shape. And white is sort of limited in the amount of territory white can get. But okay. And then black chooses to attack from a distance now. And so kind of dangling the two stones in the center because black realized continuing directly probably wasn't going to pan out very well. Black didn't support it, and now black is playing support retroactively. But here, all white has to do is defend, and the two stones now become a liability for black. So here, white is advantaged. Black is pressing. This is okay, trying to attack the white group. It's fine. You can play this way. White resists and then resists again. This is very fighting style. It's very hard for black to cut it. If black had tried to cut, white would just be able to stop here. And there's no way that black is going to be able to make anything meaningful happen, even if white just chooses to sack the two stones. Um, the right side is never real for black. So at this point, black might consider jumping to try to sacrifice the four stones entirely for now. Um, so basically, the judgment we're doing here is going, okay, as we're fighting, we're benefiting our opponent, so let's not give our opponent the benefit. Let's let's play away, set up the board first, and then give the stones a purpose for extraction later. Realistically, black wants to get to A, and black would also like to get down to B. These are the sort of two areas that black should be gunning for with Sente because the opening phase hadn't been finished yet. We sort of jumped right into the middle game. And so instead, black pushes down, making the fight even bigger. White is not hard pressed to save the two stones. White could instead, for example, just push here. Because again, not really possible for black to cut it. If it reverts to this particular position, white can always play 13. Okay, but now this is sort of where white starts to go wrong. White's trying to get into save everything mode instead of identifying what white needs to do here. So you following, Arunas?
Yeah.
So between the two stones and the wall, which one is the main group?
The wall.
Right, so we should save the main group.
Okay.
Two stones are very light. Black has already invested locally two extra moves against these two stones.
Hmm.
It's okay to give those odds to him, right? Because we're already behind there.
Hmm.
So let him have those. Yeah, because here, black can even consider to just turn and try to sacrifice and surround white or something. For example, like this, or maybe like this one. Or black could even start from here to force white to fix and then seal. Now all of a sudden it's starting to get away from you.
Hmm.
There's a gap. White would like to be able to shoot through that gap to escape. For example, something like this. And maybe it could work, maybe it doesn't. Takes a lot of reading, but it's going to be hard. And even if, let's say, it did work, let's say miraculously somehow black can't drive it down and just capture it, white is going to damage irreparably the other side that white invested in to do this. And so this is where a lot of these types of games are lost, is when players start to overcomplicate it themselves. Just stick to the list. Identify the important one, which one's the main group, defend the main group. Yep. And so now white pushes in bad shape and then comes out. Now black should be focusing the attention on the center attack. So pushing here would be big. If white jumps, black and Hane, again, threatening that drive all the way to the edge of the board, which will kill white. If white plays the bamboo, something like this, black can play tigers, something like this, and white locally isn't alive yet. Um, it's going to be a very difficult mission for white now with two weak groups. Instead, black turns. This is taking the foot off the gas a little bit. White's going to have the opportunity to defend the center, either something like this or maybe something like extend. Black is probably not going to be able to kill cleanly. Maybe it's possible. But white really doesn't want to allow black to seal. And then here again, it's just a bit soft. Black had to find a bit more of a forcing line, something like AB or like AB, AAC, something a bit more assertive, so that as white is coming out, black can sort of be the boss of the whole interaction and really drive white where black wants. Once white gets to sort of save both and then white comes out, now it's just back to black being on the back foot again. Um, so for this series of maybe 10, 15 moves, there were some hiccups, but it ended up settling out with white keeping white's advantage. I would be very careful with this exchange. I don't know if your opponent is in this review. Um,
Oh,
Generally, you don't play it unless you need to. Like if you're anticipating a capturing race and you need to reduce liberties or force for some other reason. And the reason I say that is because the eye that white would have at B is already broken. There's no need to exchange A to break the eye further. It's never going to be a real eye anyway. White would have to make a real eye somewhere out here with this part of the group for B to actually become a full eye worth 1 point. So black can save a move and just keep pushing. This is going to be the more profitable direction anyway, because this is the area black can actually build. Right? Always we have to be thinking about profit, even in the fighting. And so black sort of goes backwards. Black is worried about the edge of the board for some reason. I'm not really sure what that is about, but okay, we're there. And white turns, limiting black, and now white can go back to the center. Yep. White could also, Arunas, push one more time.
mm-hmm.
If black flies to the center, Hane is actually quite painful because black has so many cuts, right?
Yes.
So even the double Hane could be really useful to force black to play inside his own area again further. And
Mm-hmm.
two is almost always Dame for black anyway. If we want to play like center direction, white might consider playing tight, or white might even consider playing this one. Both of these moves are staying somewhat close to the black group, trying to keep the chasing pressure.
Mm-hmm.
If we play something like this that's a bit more flat, it gives black the opportunity to press us instead and then build eye space,
Right.
sort of using white's position against white. Whereas with a move like this, it's a bit harder for black to actually build that eye space. White can play a lot more assertively,
Mm-hmm.
right? We can see, for example, something like this, and then all of a sudden, black made zero eyes, as opposed to the one that black was going to get, right? Um, so that's just kind of a small detail about the shape, so to speak. This attachment I do like by black. I think this is a good move. A very useful probe against the white stone that's actually quite helpful for the fight in the center. It's much more likely on this board white's going to Hane from the right side and try to give away the corner. For example, something like this, because the direction of the center is much more valuable to white. And the reason
Mm-hmm.
it's more valuable here is because of the presence of that weak group, right?
Yep.
So that's sort of the logic into how we can apply that to the direction of the play here. Because when white goes this way, black has the opportunity to break it.
Mm-hmm.
We can imagine something like this. There's a fight brewing, but then black can sort of link those areas together a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if white has to worry about fight one and fight two, white's going to have to give up ground with one to win the other. Then we what happens is we achieve something called a furikawari or an exchange. And then
Mm-hmm.
basically it's just a matter of counting who ended up gaining more in that exchange
Yeah.
or trade, right? So
Yep.
this direction would avoid the trading and just force black to play the inside direction while white builds the center and guarantees the follow-up. A lot of you who have seen my reviews, you'll know I'm pretty big on the follow-up. When you want to play Go at a high level, or if you're trying to improve, one of the best ways to do it is to try to keep the strategy flowing. You want to make sure that your move leads into something uh, else that's positive. All right, so we have kick and knight smooth. this all possible. Nothing wrong with this. White is sort of playing a bit off Joseki in the sense that white's going a bit further, but I think it's possible because black is weak. I think white can be even more assertive if white really wanted to. White could play something like p5. It's a very
Oh,
strange looking move, I'm sure, but when you see what it sort of does to the black corner, and then white gets to build with this type of thickness, now you're sort of daring black to invade you,
uh-huh.
right? Because if black doesn't invade, let's have black play away for a second. The threat that white has is white's playing like this, basically.
Yeah.
And this type of thing is very scary for black to deal with. How does black break the Moyo now, right?
Yeah.
So black might go, oh, well, I need to get in there.
Hmm.
But then white still attaches and extends, and black's still under attack,
Yeah.
right? And it starts a bit of a fight, but black is going to have to give up ground. And eventually, what it translates into is that as this black group is trying to live, the white's going to connect these two groups, which is going to make them immortal against black's group, and the group on the right side is going to suffer and probably die.
Uh-huh.
Or black is going to manage to save both, and white's going to get a nice big thick group here that completely erases the left side and rips black to shreds. And so that's really the future that white is sort of guaranteeing by playing this way, and both of those lead to a win for white. So just sort of identifying based on what's on the board, sort of the easiest path to victory. Um, so black got to fix the corner and get a lot of territory, then white starts the attack in the center. Um, okay, black is not going to die or shouldn't die, but you know, a lot can happen. This move was not really necessary. White satisfies enough conditions to be strong. You have eye shape and you're out to the center. That's 2 out of 3 check marks.
Hmm.
You've got guaranteed one eye A and probably guaranteed second eye B. If he wants to break that eye, then he has to make this attachment. But the minute that he breaks this eye, you're just going to make the second one here. So you have the Mi for the life already. So no need to add a stone to a group that's already living. And then white invades. This is good. Aiming for C5. Black fixes clearly, and then black is attacking. Unfortunately, this attack isn't real. And the reason that it's not real is because this is the target, the 2 stones. What's bigger than the 2 stones? Black A group, black B group. So in situations like this, we can apply the danger level concept and look at the board and go, okay, yeah, my 2 stones are weak, but that group is not necessarily as important as black A or B. Both A and B are bigger, and now I have Sente. And so white could answer black's attack by attacking in earnest himself. And if black wants to go for some trade, I think white is more than happy to accept these terms.
Yep.
So moving on, black creates a group. Black is playing very tight in the local area. At this point, black probably would prefer to play a little bit faster. Maybe black was worried about getting cut, but black needs to keep pressure because if you're playing moves like this, Haneng against this group that's already alive, white is actually not hard pressed at all to answer you. And if white does answer, it might be something like this peep and this jump to cut you in half. White's never going to give you a direct response. So you want to be very, very careful about these things. And so for you, Arunas, this push was slow.
Hmm.
Your group was alive. The strong group doesn't need any more stones. Attack his eye
Right.
space and cut him off. Get ahead
Hmm.
of him, right? Don't push him from behind. That's effectively
Right.
what you're doing here is you're helping him get to the
Yep.
goal, which is connect to his corner,
Yep.
right? So you make your own separation just a little bit harder. Not impossible, but just a bit harder.
Yeah.
Now here, it ends up not really mattering much. Again, this one also not really needed. You could just cap him.
Yeah.
This is completing the net. Black only has
Right.
one eye. Black's probably not going to
Right.
get the second. If black extends, you're just going to give it,
Yeah. Sure.
right? You don't really need to fight it. And if black is playing like this to try to escape, I mean, hell, more the merrier for me.
Yeah.
I'll get as thick as you want to let me get if it means I get to come back and kill you here. Means
Right. Exactly what I was thinking.
something's gonna fall. So at this point, I think white is very firmly winning now. White doesn't have any weak groups. Left side is connected, the center is alive. Once white defends here, the whole upper side is alive. Yeah, there's just no more room for black to make up ground. Black's only real source of territory is the bottom right corner. It's not enough. It's less than 40 points.
Yep.
In fact, White's whole sort of upper side area is bigger than Black's bottom right corner even. And White has Comey, and White has more points on the board. And White's also attacking Black in two different places. It's just
Yep.
too many hurdles, I think, for Ippon and for Q to overcome at this point. Um, and so if there's no more questions, I will move to our last game.
Okay. Thanks.
Uh-huh. And this one is Terry versus Shuffles. I don't think I know Shuffles. Pull Tyrannos 9Q. Always a pleasure to have Terry. Terry's games. I must say I'm a very big fan of the opening choice.
Oh, that's a opening that a brand new one that Ben created for me.
Nice. Yeah, the 5-3 is an opening move I've studied a lot actually. I have a lot of experience with this specific enclosure. Um, so this is all fairly normal so far. This is a relatively old way of handling the 5-3. The idea is you want black to play Sansan and then white's going to make a base. That's the easy short version of it. Black chooses to be a bit more globally dominating towards the right side and give up a little more territory. Okay, it's fine. Nothing wrong with this. Nowadays, the more modern move for black to handle 5-3 would be to make this 3-3 invasion directly and see how black will handle.
Hmm.
And usually it's going to turn into this one. This is the sort of advanced variation. Black is going to extend, white's going to Atari and push. We're going to get this sort of capturing race type of thing going on where black is going to make all these sort of exchanges, get all this stuff going on. White's going to extend, black's going to push. And it turns into this whole crazy crawling on the second line thing. Eventually, one of two things is going to happen. Black is going to play a placement around A somewhere to kill the white corner, and white's going to let it. Or black is going to keep pushing along the outside. White's going to save the corner, and black is going to get to switch up and try to attack the outside white group. Those are really the only two end game situations that we're kind of looking for out of this corner. If you don't like the complications of that, then you play the simple method, which is this bend and this hane. And now against this, black will usually connect, white will extend, and then technically the Joseki ends here. Black can continue by playing this attachment and peep. These are both good exchanges. Then we can extend 14-15. This would be the quote unquote full pattern. Black can actually save all of these because it's not very likely that white is going to play this move anytime soon to stop it. We can go over maybe this cut is not really good for black in most cases. Even if white just connects and cuts on the outside and gives this to black, the double Atari is just too painful. And if black connects, white can extend, and the 8-for-9 exchange didn't accomplish anything. So that's why you don't ever really see this at a higher level. And if black extends, the shape can get even worse sometimes. It can become possible even for white to cut and do some nasty things on the outside. Plus, all of white's pushes will be forcing. So those are just some details. Going back to the game variation, I think Terry, what's your actual like AGA level? Are you still around like 8Q or are you a little bit stronger than 8Q?
Yo, Terry.
She's muted, it's all good. I think for like low DDK, this move is probably fine.
Yeah.
Um, I think for the stronger DDK levels, like once you start getting into like the 7-6-5s, I would probably prefer to see black block the corner. And the
By
main
the
re
way, I was muted when you asked about my level. It is 9Q,
Okay. Yeah, so
mid
I think
9Q.
I think I think 9Q this move is fine. Um Opponents at the 8 to 9Q range are not going to know how to I don't want to use the word punish, but for lack of a better word, they're not going to know how to really play against it well to a way that might make this placement disadvantaged. Um R17 is a safer investment. It gives you points and stability with your two stones. Generally speaking, once you've accomplished this shape, Terry, your corner at P4 and R4 is considered thick, and your group at R15 is now also thick. So what that means is if white invades, black is actually very happy for this because white can never make a big territory on the right-hand side. Black is too strong. So anything white does here is going to be small by comparison. That means that if white does come in, black will just play elsewhere, not have to worry about it. Whereas with something like this, when white invades, you have to be assertive. You have to take an attacking position. That's what this stone is intending to do. And so there's a lot more margin of error for a stone like this to become bad placement after a fight happens. Meaning, like, let's say a whole sequence of moves plays out, and then this stone is in an awkward spot from the perspective of Tewari analysis. It'll lose efficiency. Um, but moving on, this is white throwing darts at a dartboard. Basically, white does not understand the position fundamentally by the shape, and so white doesn't really know how to play against it. And so white's just making forcing moves, hoping something sticks. At 9Q, perfectly valid strategy. You're probably going to win half your games this way. I can't really say anything bad about it. Sometimes, being at 6-7 down level, it's exactly the same thing too. Only our version of throwing a dart at a dartboard would look something more like this. Yeah, it's a useful strategy, but be careful with these peeps. This is more for shuffles. Gojuan 5P told me once when I was 14 years old that like 99% of the time in fighting, empty triangle is the best move.
Mm.
And the other flip side of that coin is that 99% of the time the peeps we play are bad. This is a good example of a really bad peep.
Yep.
It doesn't give white any benefit at all. It only benefits black by making black stronger because later there might have been a situation where white could have wedged and cut, or white could have leveraged some attachment to create a weakness somewhere. All of those possibilities disappear the minute we exchange these two stones. So it might not look like a lot now, but it's actually very painful, and it's something that you typically want to avoid doing if possible. But what I can recommend is if you're finding yourself in a position like this where your opponent has got all five of their stones on one side of the board and it's looking very big and very scary, but all of your stones are nicely spread out and there's other big opening points, just play away. Don't worry about it. Let them have the burden of building it. You can just collect points elsewhere. For example, white can go here. And sure, black might expand again. Okay, white can expand too. Then black might expand again and white can expand too. But if you actually count what white is building and what black is building, white's actually not behind. The game is dead even. So white's not losing much. White doesn't have to be hurried. Okay. Here, when you're going to make these attachments, and this is not really the appropriate level to explain this, but I will anyway. When you're going to make these kinds of attachments, and by these kinds of attachments, I mean you're the clearly disadvantaged party in the local area. In this case, white is the weaker of the two parties on the right side, and you're contacting your opponent's strong stones. You must play lightly. The problem with white's move is that by extending and increasing liberties, white has now committed to saving the Q11 stone. This is the opposite of playing lightly. This is playing very heavy. And so now when black is playing things like this extension
Yeah.
or this push, the burden of white to save is higher, and the difficulty of white to save is also much higher. So what we can do instead is we can play the Hane. And it looks very scary. You go, but teacher, what if I get cut? And then the teacher will say, that's the point. Because by getting cut, you can sacrifice something and have a much easier time.
Yep.
There's no burden on white to save it now, only burden on black to kill it and keep it dead. If black is making all the exchanges locally, yeah, black is collecting some territory. But now white has a very thick, strong group inside the black enemy camp. Black only got territory on the third line. It's not so big. White can give this. Easily white can give this. White could give it even one line higher and still be happy. Did white lose the two stones? Sure. White lost the two stones. Doesn't mean much. Those are forcing moves, right? People have heard me that know my teaching style, know that I love to preach about it. You don't have to defend forcing moves. They get their value the minute you play them by forcing your opponent to commit to a decision. That's why we force things. We want to commit them to something so that we can do something productive. This would be productive. It would be much better directionally for white. Hmm. Now, white probably needs to turn. And that's just because when we have this shape, very often A is a vital point. Black would really like to push this A point. In fact, right now, black could, and it would just be good for black. Double Hane is very hard for white because black can double Hane back.
Mm,
Black is too strong on the right-hand side for white to fight it. It's going to get to this point, and black has too many liberties. It's white's 3 versus black's 4, and white has cuts on the outside.
Yep.
This is not sustainable for white. So we get to this point, white would have to yield, and black will be the person coming out ahead in the fight. This would be good for black. Your two stones in this case, Terry, would be in the perfect position because they're thick and they're covering all of your cutting points. This
nice.
means that if white ever cuts, white is playing towards black's thickness. White is going to be severely disadvantaged, if not outright dead. So it's a vital point. Black wants to play A to reduce white and to keep white from growing, and also because it's forcing and it's going to give white a lot of lateral space in the center to move. White can expand much farther now to settle the group and get away from the black thickness. This one is just a bit tight. This will allow black to separate. This would be sort of the beginner separation type move. This is the direct one where we're squeezing white's shape directly, basically. The more advanced version of this idea is to examine the neighbor. We can see this group here, right? What
Yeah.
happens if we poke at it a little bit?
Hmm.
You might go, isn't that a bit off topic? Yeah, maybe a little bit. It's possible it could be off topic. But all of a sudden, white's looking really close to being dead now.
Yeah.
Right? Black ends up getting a much thicker surround that way. This would be an example of a leaning attack. Um, Either method could work for black, or black could push it one. Anything is possible, and black is doing quite well here. Instead, black to Nukis. Okay, it's fine. You can also play this way. White can defend now, but it's Gote. It's very small. So this is approval. There's almost never a reason not to play this one if you can help it. This move is always working. There's never this cut really for black to take the corner. This is a trick play. You can look this one up on Josekipedia for those that don't know it. This is not really a working move. So because black cannot play c4, there's no reason not to go all the way. If you're worried about giving black the thickness on the left side, then that probably means the left side is the direction you need to play from. And then we would just pincer to prevent that from happening. But this one I see a lot, and this one is only really applicable for white when the situation looks something like this, where white has stones on both sides, and white wants to make the corner thick to remove black's liberties. Or not liberties, but remove black's forcing moves against white's corner. By making the group thick, white never really has to respond to anything black really does against it, at least not the first move. And so as a result of that, white can use the two stones on the side to attack much more ferociously. Um,
What I found interesting about this is that it reverted to my having approached low.
yep, right.
Very odd.
And he got less territory as a result of it, right? So
Yeah.
it was better for black that that happened than white played the normal Joseki, where white would have been ever so slightly better. White did get Sente though, and white defended the upper side, which was okay. It's not the worst, but it's not the best. I would prefer to see white block the center. At this point, the opening is nearly over. The last real opening point for white would be to play some enclosure like A or B. Um, when white doesn't do that, black probably should approach. The approach is quite big for that reason, or invade the Sansan maybe. But other than that, this push at one is also still huge and probably more urgent than anything. Okay, now we start getting into the meat and potatoes a little bit, and I'll try to speed up because we're already at 11. This white move is an overplay. White does not have the strength to invade black. Black is clearly stronger. When you're in this type of situation, Terry, find the closest neighbor, separate them. So for black,
Ah,
that would be play this one,
right. Makes sense.
right? If white wants to try to go crazy, we can let white go crazy. White's going to die somewhere, probably, right? Your whole group down here is like sort of prepared already to intercept the white group that's trying to run away. You're making your A stone better. You see how that stone's position is naturally improving,
Mm-hmm.
right? This would be an example of a move that has now become hyper efficient. That's a really big benefit to black if black can get to that place. When we cap, this direction is not the best direction for black because what future does black have in this area? It's very hard to say black has anything. The A stone is very low. White can press it down, and plus white's already got his head sticking out at B. So the center direction is a bit harder for black. Black's gonna have to prove it. All right, and then now white is helping black connect. This is usually what we don't want to do, although white should connect like this because black cannot cut. Um, we do not want to hold our opponent's hand and then walk them to their friends.
Right.
Right. We would prefer to do like Yakuza method and cut his hand off. So this is the time for drawing the samurai sword and striking the opponent, not walking him to the school bus. And then black is defending when black didn't really need to defend anything. Black was not in danger. If we look at the groups and we sort of apply the principles, right? The A group is safe. It has a base. It can make two eyes easily. It can still get out to the center via this sort of B, C, D method. Um, the group in the bottom right corner, B is going to either be able to connect to C or D. White's never going to be able to separate the B stones, and black can always sacrifice them. They're forcing moves. So we'll do B for the whole bottom right. And the bottom left, C. This group is stable as it is. Both white and black have three stones in the corner. White can invade at C7, but black will just trade the base for the influence, and white is not really able to surround it on a large scale, so it's also perfectly safe. So then we have to look at our opponents. Does white have any weak groups that can be attacked? And the answer here is yes. This group is not alive yet. This group is also nearly surrounded. It's not quite behind enemy lines. It's sticking out a little bit, but we can fix that. We can fix that real quick, right? And all of a sudden, white is in danger. So now is the time for black to adopt aggressive posture, not defensive posture. And white is defending the last weak group. This is good. And then black to Nuki. So white is not safe completely yet. This move can be fine if black is able to generate something positive that helps this area. So we'll see. Okay, good. We're coming through. This one, usually connect is better. We're not worried so much about white getting territory here because we're also collecting points. So as far as like the local trade goes, this is okay. This one is going to be a lot more risky. You're leaving an open-ended invitation for white to resist and fight you. And it ends up becoming a trade where black takes the whole corner, white gets the thickness. But now that white got the thickness, it's going to be much harder to attack the center. Pardon the noise. People in our insurance office are very happy. Somebody closed a deal, I think. F5, this is okay. It's not really, I mean, it's attacking the black group. Black probably wants to defend at some point. Probably sooner is better than later. This one is okay. You can defend with this as well. Your corner is very safe and strong. Doesn't matter if white cuts with Atari or with this one. Neither move will be sente in this case, and black can extend to secure the base this way. This is how you can do it, Terry, while maximizing your territory. As opposed to this one, which is sort of swimming at the center, doesn't really secure more of a base and also doesn't improve your eye space odds.
Yeah, I was trying to get into the center because I
Mhm.
felt like once he totally blocked it off, it was going to be too much.
Well, black has a lot of territory. I think we have to count it, right? So the maximum potential of his center as of right now can be maybe this, maybe, probably not even this, to be honest, because black kind of has this ABC idea, can play one of these. So the center is really not that big, right? Like comparatively, your territory down here is actually larger than all the points he's threatening in the middle.
Mm.
So this one is a maybe counting exercise, but yeah, black is
Yeah.
doing fairly okay on points. So this might be, I think white won the game by a small margin, right?
It was 8.5, and it actually should have been 4.5 because I lost 2 stones I never should have lost. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, so like as we're starting to simplify into endgame now, it really shouldn't be much like very possible for black to lose this game, provided the left side doesn't die. Um, but I guess white was able to make some difference up somehow. Here you can play Atari Connect.
Mm,
White has a cut, but the cut doesn't quite work. Like locally, black is going to be able to swallow it. And sort of skimming through, I want to see how white handled the end game because I haven't actually looked at the end of this one.
mhm.
Right.
White
Um,
reduced an awful lot on the right side there with those
yeah,
pushes.
yeah. So now it's because the two stones in the corner are dead, white gets a lot of territory there. The center, it looks like white started to balance it out, maybe pull ahead here. But a lot of that I think was mostly due to like a bit earlier in the game with the center fighting. Right. So I
Yeah.
think the biggest takeaway for you here was probably you needed to be a bit more assertive starting around move 30, recognizing that your groups were the strong groups and your opponent's groups are the weak group, and that you can actually adopt the attacking posture to close the game out.
Yeah, that's my weakness,
Hmm.
seeing my opponent's weaknesses and
Hmm.
taking advantage of them. It's what I fail to do.
Yeah. So then what I would recommend for you, if it's something you'd like to work on, I don't know how many games you play a week or a day, but put a sticky note on your computer desk, a very bright colored sticky note that you're not used to seeing, and just write that on the sticky note so it forces you to look at it and read it during the game. It'll
Yeah,
help sort of keep you on track with that a little bit. On the other hand, you could also do the rubber band method, but that requires you to remember to slap yourself with a rubber band to remind yourself to do it. And I'm less a fan of those methods personally, although they work for
yeah.
some people. All right. Awesome. Well,
Well,
that's going to conclude my review for the evening. I'm going to stop the
thank you.
recording now.